Yo, I am Mr. Drake Swan, and this is Swan's Purview, where we discuss life, culture, and growth for the modern black man. Today is March 26, 2025. Yep, I know. It's been 2 months. It's been 2 months since the last time we kicked it. Y'all gotta forgive me, man. I got a lot going on. I've had a lot going on over these last 2 months. The last time we talked. I was getting ready to start the spring semester of grad school. Um, Confession, been tearing me out the frame. Okay, um, I'm I'm only taking two classes right now. Only two classes. I say that I'm taking two classes right now, and both of these classes are they put me through the ringer. They're stretching me in a good way. Um, they require a lot of attention from me. Require a lot of time. Today was the first day in a very long time that I got an opportunity to step away from classwork and not have to think about it, not focus on it. It's partly because while we were on spring break last week, I took the opportunity to get ahead in class, so in my classes. So yeah, um, wedding planning. We are approaching. We are about we 2.5 months out. I think we're at 70 days, something like that, 70 something days away from the big day. Yeah. My advice to anybody who's getting ready to get married or plan on getting married in the near future, push that date as far out as possible. Okay. Um, and start paying on it immediately. Weddings are expensive, man, and what you don't know you have to pay for, you got to pay for. Yeah, man, the financial aspect of weddings, yeah. Um, I'm learning this thing as I go. We are learning this thing as we go, my wife and I. Um, Luckily, we have a great wedding planner on our team. She makes it a lot easier. Um, and yeah, I guess that's all I can say to that. Just if you plan on getting married anytime soon, man, at least 2 years out. At least. Especially if you don't plan on having anything small. Um, yeah, 2 years out. That way you're not stressing. That way, if any other big things come on, like you decide you want to buy a house, like what we did, you decide you want to have any children in the in the time frame or whatever, want to buy some cars, like we did, like stretch that thing out. Sit on that. As some of you all know, I'm a federal employee. I'm an accountant. So everything that you all have been hearing in the news as it pertains to federal employees, I have been dealing with that as well. So that is also part of why I've been away. Um, just taking some time to focus on the job, focus on my mental health, dealing with the job, dealing with the environment. Yeah, man, it's been a time. These last 2 months have been stressful, but God is good. God has always been great. Um, so I'm not complaining. Just telling you all about what it is. Um, and also a few weeks ago, or a week ago now, essentially, um, a little over 13 days. Um, it's the anniversary of my grandmother transitioning. Um, so um, dealing with the build up to that, dealing with the actual day. My family and I spent some time doing some things that my grandmother enjoyed. We went to a restaurant in Montgomery, Alabama. Um, Spent some time with my family. Then we went to her gravesite where we said some words and released blooms in her memory. Um, it was a very joyous occasion. I tried my best to be tough and not cry, but yeah, your boy shed some tears. If you know, you know I love my granny. That was my heart. She is my heart, I should say. Uh, anyway, moving on. I'm about to get sad over here. The track of the week is by Sam Cooke, and that track is "A Change Is Gonna Come." Um, I chose this track for a few reasons. The first of which was because in the past 3 weeks or so, I have listened to that song maybe 7 times. It has come up on my Spotify playlist or one of my Spotify playlists. It has come up in a few movies I've watched. Um, and it made me remember or made me think back to the very first time I ever heard the song. I was a senior at George Washington Carver, the illustrious George Washington Carver in Montgomery, Alabama, um, and I was escorting a young lady to her cotillion. Um, I don't remember the exact name of the event, but it was put on by some young ladies over an organization that was dealing with the young ladies in our school. Anyway, um, the my part of it, I was a gentleman of distinction, was what we were called. And I just had to basically escort across the stage, dance with her, and some things like that. And during our dance sequence, that was the song, and we spent hours for weeks learning that dance to that song. So it quickly became one of my favorite songs. For those of you also who don't know, I played band. I was in the band. I played baritone. I played trumpet in the band. I also sang in the honors choir when I was in high school. So music runs in my blood, like it's deep within my DNA. So any good music, good song is just gonna stick with me. This one it did with my senior in high school. Some historical references about the song was it was created. Sam Cooke created this song in 1964. And it was initially going to be, or initially was on his Ain't That Good News album. Ain't That Good News. It was on his Ain't That Good News album. I didn't know that. I actually just recently learned that because the album I thought it was on was something that came out in 2003. Don't ask me why. I assume that was true. I mean, it is true. They re-released the music, but for some reason it just stuck with me 2003. I'm assuming because I wanted to relate his music to my time. Anyway, it was initially created. The ancestor initially created that song because of a situation he had dealt with, going to or attempting to go to a motel in Louisiana. Turns out the motel was a whites only motel, and they turned him away. Um, that song went on to become like I want to say the soundtrack. Essentially, yes, the soundtrack of the civil rights movement. In 2007, it was preserved in the Library of Congress by the National Recording Registry. Like, it's a very legendary song. I was privileged and honored by Miss Johnson, who was the teacher at the time, who was over the cotillion for those young ladies, and who actually recruited me to be one of the gentlemen of distinction for that program, or asked me same thing. But essentially, I credit her for introducing me to that song because she was the one who curated that event. So it's one of my favorite songs of all time. When you get an opportunity, if you haven't heard it, check it out. If you have heard it and you haven't heard it in a long time, go listen to it, man. Today's episode. Let me get some water in my system. I won't be doing that again, not on camera. I just looked at myself drinking through that straw. That's kind of funny. I'm gonna have to get me a glass or something. Anyway, today's episode is Life is a Rich Man's Sport. Let me say that again. Life is a rich man's sport. Yeah. So last week, tell you where this came from. Okay. So last week, my lady and I decided we were going to essentially play hooky. We were going to take some time off from our everyday lives. I'm in grad school. She's in post grad school right now. She's attempting to obtain some more letters behind her name. Um, we both work full time. We're both full time parents. We got a lot going on. Life be life and on all fronts. And it's usually pulling us away from each other. So this particular day, a couple of weeks ago, we decided we were going to spend some time together. And it started with dropping the young one off at school. And after we dropped her off at school, we went to Top Golf. Now this is bright early in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning with Top Golf. And when we first get in the parking lot, I say, baby, I'm Top Golf. Like 9 o'clock in the morning, like not that Top Golf is a bad date. Actually a great date. But I was implying like who goes to Top Golf at 9 o'clock in the morning? I was not expecting this place to be open at 9 o'clock in the morning. Sure enough, it is open. Not only is it open, it is booming. Like there are multiple cars. Like we're talking at least 2 dozen, 3 dozen cars in the parking lot. So they're open and business is flowing. So we get inside the establishment and I'm seeing polo shirts, Oxfords all over the place. Like business casual business meetings are going on. I'm like, man, pay attention. So that's what I do. I'm paying attention at this point. Like I'm seeing what's going on. Um, there are multiple gentlemen walking around with their clubs and their caddies, and they're going into these separate rooms. Like if you've ever been to Top Golf, or if you've never been to Top Golf, behind every station there's like a door, and some of those doors have rooms. Well, some of those rooms are meeting rooms, and they have meetings and tables and things in these rooms. I'm like, man, never known all of this was unbeknownst to me because this was only my third time actually going to Top Golf, and this actually became my first time ever actually participating or playing in any of the games. Prior to this day, I had never played golf before in my life. Um, I had watched it a time or two on ESPN, but I was always uninterested because golf always seemed boring on television. I just couldn't get into it. Very slow, too quiet, just couldn't get into it. Well, obviously, I had a great time, so much so that I want to, for my personal leisure, I invest in the game, learn how to play the game. I really, really enjoy myself thoroughly, and not just like the game of the Top Golfness, but the actual swinging of the clubs, learning the history of the game, what the clubs mean, and all those different things. Like I think I got a new hobby that I'm going to develop. Anyway, moving along with the story. Um, I was paying attention to my surroundings, and I noticed that there were a lot of business meetings that were going on around us. Like she and I, and this is being honest, were the only two non-working, as in non-people who not people working in the establishment, black people in the building. Everybody else was white, and looking around like, man, okay, again, pay attention, Mr. Swan. So we ended up leaving that spot anyway, about 11 something. Time doesn't even matter anymore. Just tell you about the story. But we ended up leaving that spot and we ended up going to a brunch spot here in Atlanta. And I have got to tell you, they had the best oxtails that I have had since I have been here in Atlanta, okay? Now, first I want to say this. I have had a lot of oxtails in Atlanta because where I'm from, that's what we do. We love oxtails, okay? And every oxtail I've had in Atlanta, from every restaurant, from the Caribbean restaurants to the Jamaican restaurants to the just black restaurants here in Atlanta, they all make sweet oxtails. Can't stand it. Don't give me no sweet oxtails. I don't want no sweet oxtails. I am a West Side Montgomery boy from Alabama. Okay, like don't play with me. Give me some real oxtails. I don't want no sugar in my oxtails. Okay, kick it. Get on with that. Anyway, these oxtails here were spot on. So with that said, I will be gatekeeping this restaurant because I do not need you all going to this restaurant and driving up the price. Okay, sorry, can't help you. But yeah, we ended up going to the brunch spot, had the oxtails, enjoyed myself. And shortly after, we went to this spa. Now, um, this spa just so happened to be, and I don't remember the name of it. I think it was like Spa Land or something like that. But it just so happened to be the largest spa I have personally seen here in the States. And I have been to a lot of spas. As a matter of fact, I lived in Europe for 3 years, specifically Germany. And if you know anything about Europeans, if you know anything about Germany, you know those Germans, they love the spa, okay? They love their spas. And this particular spa rivals those that I've seen or been to in Germany. As a matter of fact, this particular spa had more saunas and steam rooms. Or yeah, saunas. I shouldn't say steam rooms. Had more saunas or different varieties of saunas than any spa I had gone to when I was in Europe. Like you can go in this place and spend an entire day in this place. That's how lavish it was. And essentially, we did spend at least 3 hours, if I'm not mistaken, in this spa. And I was doing a lot of thinking. Like that particular day was while I was having a lot of fun with my wife. I was really present with her. I did a lot of reflecting and just observing my surroundings and taking in um, what was going on around me. And in that environment too, I got to notice that there were a lot of players in life in that at that particular place. Like these were people. There were some, as you would expect, older people who are basically who you would assume would be retired. But then too, there were also people who were around my age who are not of my ethnicity, um, who middle of the day, because this was literally between the hours of 11 and 2 o'clock, and they're at this spa having a grand old time. I'm like, man, whew, I I've never been afforded this life. Like, I mean, yes, I take time off from work often, but generally speaking, a day like this, we had to. Well, my wife planned for it. I was along for the ride. I just had to take the time off from work, but I'm gonna get to it in a minute. But basically, what I'm saying is that particular day is not something that we can afford to do often. Um, she paid for the spa. She actually paid for everything that day because that was her way of treating me to a rest day or whatever. But it just made me think about um, how much those things cost. But I'm gonna get them jumping ahead anyway. So as jumping ahead, I can see in my notes it says explain where this is coming from. So let me explain where this is coming from. So quick backstory. I made a blog post some months ago on my website, and it was titled "Self Care is not just for the ladies." And in the post, I go on to list an extensive list of things us fellas can do and adopt for self care for ourselves, and how we should take care of our mental and our physical and our spiritual and all these other things that we need to be more mindful of, right? Um, and keeping our health up, right? Um, and pretty much at the end of the post, I go on to ask the brothers, you guys, to join me in on the journey of taking care of ourselves. Okay? Well, I mean, I've had the conversation within myself. I've talked to myself a few times about it. I've thought about this multiple times about self care being expensive, but it really, really dawned on me this particular day that self care really costs. Like life really costs. Um, my wife and I did a real quick rundown, a calculation of how much it took for her to maintain um, her baseline. That's her hair, her nails, um, eyebrow, her personal hygiene, the waxing, all these other things, and of course we have a 16-year-old daughter that lives with us. Like all of these extra things that we take for granted that just are normal to everyday life, and her number. just her number on just the basic things came out to be about $2,000. That's to include her and Haley, and just the basic things. It came out to be about $2,000 a month if she were to maintain them every month, month to month. I'm like, man, okay. So I got to thinking about what it would cost to maintain just my baseline. That's my gym membership, my haircut, which, yes, obviously I'm bald, but my barber charges me $100. It was $95 is what it costs to maintain this baldness and this beautiful beard of mine. $99, $95. I'm sorry. Um, to get my hands manicured and my feet pedicured, that's another $120 a month. For my chiropractor, it is, I think, $97 a month or something like that. Our gym memberships is another 220 some dollars a month. Like, these things are adding up all the time. They cost. These are just baseline things at this ripe age of mine of 36, getting ready to be 37 years old. These are things I have to maintain for myself, my wife, and my children. And just like, I'm quickly tallying these things up, and it's becoming more real to me as I'm sitting in this moment enjoying myself. Life is for the rich. Like, life is a rich man's sport. I mean, yes, we live in America. I can't speak for any other country. I mean, yes, I did live in Germany at one point in my time in my life, and it was a rich man's sport then. That was over a decade ago. But it really is a rich man's sport now. Um, yeah, I skipped a few things in my notes. It doesn't matter. I pretty much covered all of that. But I before I go any further, I want to say that this is going to be covered in multiple parts. I'm gonna try to keep it down to two parts. It might be three parts, but today's episode will not cover all of what we're discussing. Um, it's an introduction to life as a rich man's sport. Like, because how can I um, convey that whole message in just 40 minutes? Like, it's impossible. Um, but why is this today's topic? Well, I mean, I gave you a backstory and I told you about the date, but let me tell you about what happened a couple of nights ago. So, while my wife and I were laying in bed, and I was on my phone scrolling, and she was partially falling asleep, trying to stay awake, annoying, irritating me, just doing wifely things, right? She goes on to say, or ask, she goes on to ask a sleepy wife question. If you've been married, if you are married, you know what I'm referring to. It's these half woke, half sleep questions that your wife asks. And sometimes they're serious questions, sometimes they're not. But this is the question she goes on to ask. She says, um, are you a capitalist? So I'm taking her serious. I say, baby, how do you want me to answer this question? She says, you can only say yes or no, but I will accept maybe. So I know she's serious at this point. I also know she's sleeping, but I know she's serious at this point. So I say, maybe. She goes on to say, okay, well, are you a socialist? I asked the question again. I said, how do you want me to answer this question? She says, yes or no, but I will accept maybe. So I say maybe. Um, about 5 to 10 minutes later, she falls asleep. I mean, I know her like the back of my hand. Like, I really, really know her. 5 to 10 minutes later, she falls asleep. I knew she was sleeping the whole time. She falls asleep. Um, the complex answer to that is, it's not just a maybe to any of them. It is a yes and no to both of them. And because she was sleepy, I couldn't give her that answer, and she wasn't asking for that anyway, so it didn't even matter. At some point, the conversation will come back up, and we'll have that conversation. But essentially, we have these conversations all the time, so that's neither here nor there. But the complex answer to that is, it's a yes and a no to both of them. At my core, I believe in socialist principles. Um, Simplified thought. I think socialist principles, I, let me say it like this to simplify the thought. Um, the man I call my savior, I believe him to be a socialist. Um, the text that writes about him pretty much says he was a socialist. If you look at the principles in which he laid out, so I rock with those principles based off the fact that I follow him, and it. I'm about to say something that I normally wouldn't say. It sounds good. I've studied enough history to know that not everything that sounds good is good, and I also know that in a lot of socialist societies, it hasn't working. It hasn't worked. I know why it hasn't worked. There were a lot of outside forces that infiltrated those societies to make them not work. That's the conversation for another day. However, the question was asked what it was asked, so just giving the answer for what it is. Um, Also, too, on the other side of this, um, we live in a very capitalistic society. We live here. I live here in the United States of America. The dollar runs everything here. There's nothing needed to be added to that thought. Like, get your money, get paid, young, get paid. Like, that's all it is. If you ain't got no money, what we talking about? So, um, understanding that I have to be, in order to live in this society, a capitalist. I know a lot of black thought leaders, a lot of conventional leaders who are coming into this new age of black thought are going to disagree with me. That is their prerogative. That is their choice. Um, but here's my thought on that. Right? We live in a capitalist society. Like there's no getting around that. If you live in the United States of America, you need money to survive, and you need to be making a lot of money often to survive in this society, in this economy, in this world, in just this community, right? So essentially, this is a system that we are in. These are a set of rules that we have to play by. Essentially, a game, right? So, if I'm breaking it down that way, the capitalist society we live in, we have to learn to abide by the rules, to play the game, to get either to the next level or outside of the game. Because that's the goal, to get outside of the game. Simplifying it down any further to make it seem like this. You work, you get up and go to work every day to build up enough money to where you can either do something different, right? I.e., invest in yourself so you don't have to work for someone else, or invest in enough money into something to where you can retire off that money and have passive income. Like the game is the game. The game is a capitalist game. The game is collect as much money as you possibly can, or get access to as much money as you possibly can, so that you don't have to be running in this rat race for the rest of your life. That is the game. There's no escaping that. The only way to escape that game is to outplay the game, right? To get more money than the game allows you to get. Um, to be taken out, i.e., to transition, or you quit, which means you don't benefit anybody in your lineage. You don't benefit your mom, your dad, your kids, your brother, your sister. You don't benefit anyone. You essentially they're carrying you along. So you got to learn how to. Going back to the main focus of this paragraph is you got to learn how to pay, or we have to learn how to play the game for what it is. Killer Mike said this best, right? And I know a lot of people disagree with Killer Mike's philosophies and his principles. But I think it's a very sound thought. He said this best. He said it best in his Enrich song on the Michael album. He said, "Run up the millions, then build a village, then make your own rules. Fuck what they told you." He went on to say some other very brilliant things, some very affirming things in that song. But I think that's the mindset in which um, we should be playing this game. Like, run the coins up. I mean, get what you're gonna get, but don't be selfish about it. Like, that's a topic for the next segment in this series. But run the coins up. Don't forget that you are still playing a game. You are still in this part of the system. You can't escape this system. I think we get so caught up in the fact of, oh man, I'm tired of doing this, or this capitalist society doesn't benefit me and my family. No, it doesn't. It does not. I can and will be the first to admit, getting up every day, working 40, 50, 60, sometimes 70 hours, sometimes 80, 90 hours a week does not benefit us. It hasn't benefited us since before we came to this country. It does not benefit us. However, this is the system in which we live in. This is the system in which we have to survive in. And in surviving and getting to the next level, which is thriving and being able to establish our own systems, our own principles, our own way of life, you got to learn the game. You got to play the game. You got to know the rules. And the number one rule of this game is get your money. Get paid, young. Get paid. I don't even know what to say. So, with that said, I'm going to put a pause on that thought because, as I said, we're going to talk about this more in future episodes. So, transitioning on to the Did You Know fact of today or the week or this episode. The Did You Know fact of this episode, as we discussed in our previous episode, I'm still building out this format. And seeing as I don't have as much time as I would like to, as often as I would like to work on it, we learning this together, okay? But anyway, the Did You Know fact of this episode is, did you know Maya Angelou was the very first Black woman to be a cable car conductor in San Francisco? This is a very interesting story. So the first time she applied for the job, they refused to give her an application. Completely just turned it down, like, yep, we're not fooling with you. So what she decided she was going to do, she mustered up every bit of determination from our God and from our ancestors, and she sat outside that office building for 2 weeks until they allowed her to apply for the job. That ain't even the best part of the story. Ask me what's the best part of the story. Don't worry, I'm going to tell you anyway. The best part of the story was, this is my favorite part anyway, it's the fact that when she was reading over the application, she realized that she didn't have the qualifications, nor was she old enough for the job. Guess what, though? Our God don't play about us. Because she got the job. Obviously, I started the conversation off by saying she was the first Black woman cable car conductor of San Francisco. So, what did I tell you? I love it, man. I love it. Moving on to my book suggestion of the week. My book suggestion of the week is this is actually one of my favorite books. I actually picked up this book going back to the year is 2020. Okay. Yeah. So it's been 5 years since I've had this book. 2020, where was I? 2020, the year was 2020. I had just gotten to Pennsylvania. I had just accepted my role at the VA in Pennsylvania. And I was staying in the Airbnb. And I was like, man, I got to get my reading up. Like, the treasures are in books. Like that's where the real treasure is. Um, and I had saw an episode on YouTube. It was a GQ episode about um, different celebrities, if you will, who what they always have to have on them. Now, I'm not going to mention the guy's name right now because right now um, he is not one of the favorite people in our community right now. Like he been messing up. Anyway, um, he introduced this book. He said it was something he had to take with him everywhere he went, and I was like, okay, let me look into it because at the time it seems as though his life was on the up and up. Anyway, as the saying goes, looks can be deceiving. However, the book turned out to be a treasure for me. It ended up being an actually great book. Um, the book is Warrior of the Light. You can see this. And the book is by Paulo Coelho. I think that's I'm pronouncing his name. Anyway, it's the same author who created the book The Alchemist. Okay? It's the same author. Um, this book here, it's not just your ordinary book. It's a manual. Okay? Excuse me. It says here across the top, which it says short notes on accepting failure, embracing life, and rising to your destiny. This book, I what I realized about it is it's not something that you need to read throughout. Like you don't need to read from front to back. You can literally open this book up to any page and just begin to read. For instance, this is page 25. A warrior of the light shares his world with the people he loves. He tries to encourage them to do the things they would like to do, but for which they lack the courage. At which times the enemy appears holding two wooden signs in his hands. On one sign is written, "Think about yourself. Keep all of the blessings for yourself. Otherwise, you'll end up losing everything." On the other side, he reads, "Who do you think you are, helping other people? Can't you see your own faults?" A warrior knows that he has faults, but he knows too that he cannot do his growing alone. Distance, distant from his companions. Therefore, he knows the two signs he throws. Therefore, he throws the two signs to the floor, even if he thinks they can contain a grain of truth. The signs crumble into dust, and the warrior continues to encourage those nearest to him, which is crazy because I didn't choose this page prior to this episode. I personally believe that particular page 25, pertain or coincides with today's topic perfectly. Um, but essentially, that's what this book is for. It's like one of those books you just open up a page and just read and see what the note is for today, or see what the book is trying to tell you for the moment. Again, the name of the book is The Warrior of the Light. It's a manual by Paulo Coelho. I'm sorry if I'm chopping your name up, sir. Like, yeah. But yeah, it's one of my favorite books. Yeah. Anyway, that is actually all I have for today. Today was actually one of my faster or quicker episodes. So in closing, I'm not going to do a very extensive or recap closing today because we know we're going to discuss some of these topics or all of these topics again in a later episode. But I want to remind everyone to keep your head on the swivel and to take care of yourself, your family, and your neighbors. I look forward to catching up with you all on the real. Shalom.